Hello everyone and welcome to the LSI F1.5 EU Championship. We're today for the Austrian Grand Prix round 2 of the season and we're in qualifying with 5 minutes to go. It's Gergo Pados returning to LSI in a Mercedes and going top of the times of 3.994 is their current lap time. It's Terence up to P2 joining, and for Red Bull this time, then we've got Frantic, your championship leader in P3, Edvir, Gladio and Tom. Tom, of course, a higher tier driver, as well as Jericho, Willis, Firth and Charlie, so they are all at the back or retired from the session early on. Now, Frantic, the only current tier driver out on track looking to set a lap, and they go purple in the middle sector, but they've backed off. And they're going to try and go again, but they're pretty much dead on battery, so they're trying to save up. And they are going to push it one more time. Although not, I'm not entirely sure what the plan is here for Frantic, but they backed off at the last second. They were maybe not improving as much as they wanted to. They've decided to not go back into the pit lane, which is an interesting call. And we'll see what they can do a little bit later on. What I do know, and I can tell you now, is that we will look at a wet race towards the very end. Like we saw yesterday, the very final moments of the Grand Prix could be wet conditions. And it will be very light, so it's going to be pretty much exactly the same conditions as we had yesterday if it does rain. And we are just waiting to see a few cars come out on track, and we'll do what we can to see the action before the race and give ourselves a bit of a warm-up before we get into it. Alright, that's Frantic into the pit lane. I do apologise for the delay. We're back to it and we shouldn't have any more problems. So there is everything as usual. Now, I'm just going to test something because I'm a little bit curious to see what the situation with the audio is, because I think there may be some sort of issue, but I'm not entirely sure. Nope, maybe we're absolutely fine. We're all good. And it's Gladio currently out on track. We've got Pados and Terence as well, but it is going to be the Ferrari to set a lap next and set their final lap of the session, very likely at least, because if you look at the battery, they are pushing on this lap. And they're going to have very little to go again, if not, well, they're not going to be able to go again. So this is it for Gladio in the Ferrari. What's it going to be as they run the lovely Lewis Hamilton helmet in the final few corners, trying to push it to the limit. The Albanian across the line, DRS available, and it's going to be a P5 still. They improve by 4/10 and they get nice and close to the back of Edvir, but nothing more in the end. That is a nice little tidy lap right there, but it's the pole sitter right now, currently going into the first corner. And balancing the car quite nicely. The championship leader's going to try and take away from that, of course, if they can. They're just a couple of tenths away. Gogo Pados into turn 3, braking as late as they can. They've got a little bit wide from the apex, but they come back nicely. DRS available for the third time in the lap, effectively. And down the hill, trying to not lock up the tyres as you go against gravity. And they manage to use it quite nicely, and now we get the middle sector where the downforce is required and the throttle control is absolutely crucial. And you try and get that throttle on. Oh, it's a little bit too early for Pados there. They've just kept it valid, but that's going to lose them some time. They're going to have scrubbed off a fair bit. Final 2 corners they go through, and the final one, trying to put the throttle on at the apex to get the best run to the line. DRS available, and it's going to be a 2/10 improvement. Can anybody compete? It's Terence to go next. The driver from Hong Kong in the Red Bull, the brand new team, coming around the final corner. What's it going to be for Terence on the steering wheel this time? The brand new steering wheel, I should say. It's going to be an improvement, but not enough to get into the 3-second margin. It's Frantic, the next one to try and compete, as Edvir crosses the line to stay P4, and they don't manage to get any further than that. But it is Frantic going a little bit wide. They are improving by 2/10, but they need a little bit more if they want to try and compete with Pados here. They need another tenth or so to get close. Oh, and they've lost it in the penultimate corner, and that's going to be catastrophic for the lap time across the line for Frantic, and they will not be able to beat Gergo Pados, who gets pole position on return to LSI. It would have been a great view to see that lap go all the way down to the wire, but it didn't. That's Gergo Pados on pole position, Terence and Frantic in P3. We'll see you for the race. See you in a bit. Ready. Hold. Go! Who's going to get it into turn one? The Mercedes on the outside line pedals. It's Terence though and Frantic side by side as Frantic swoops around. The McLaren of Ed Veer sitting right behind, wants to have a go, but it's not quite going to be possible. Terence wants to have a go again. Back on Frantic. Are they going to look for the inside line? They will do so, of course, but it's the Mercedes just up in front and they've made contact. That was inevitable. I don't know what he was thinking there. It's the Mercedes who loses out. It's Frantic who looks at going back into P1 already. Is it going to be possible? It's Terence who holds on to the lead. Oh, and Gogo Paddles tried to have a go on the inside of Frantic, but that was never going to work, and they've ended up getting damage from all of that. I do not believe it. Ed Veer's going to be happy, but they're going to be also wary of what is the Mercedes going to do. Gogo Paddles very frustrated, I'm sure, with the situation, but I don't really know where they were thinking they were going to be going with the front wing at that stage. And we look at the tyre situation, I do wonder that is why they got absolutely stormed at the beginning. Well, except from the contact, of course, from Terence. So Terence is going to be in a little bit of trouble with that one, unfortunately. It is a fastest lap as they lead the way. Terence in P1 for now. Frantic tried to have a go. They were momentarily in P1. They've now sat themselves in second place. They've turned off their battery as they chase the leader of the Grand Prix, and they look for a bit more of a rhythmic way of driving this race. It's going to be Jericho Willis having a look at the back of Ed Veer, who is driving for the team that they used to drive for. It's Gogo Paddles to the inside. Despite having the damage, they're going to try and fight it, and it's almost contact. It is contact, wheel banging with the Alpine, and it's going to be a switchback attempt, but with no downforce on the front end, it's not going to be possible. And it's Jericho Willis who did make that move on the Dutchman. Ed Veer just having to let that one happen. It's Charlie who sits right behind in the racing ball car, and then they've got Tom Robb on that medium tyre as well. Gladio and Verf just a little bit further back in this race. Not too far away. They've got to try and find a little bit more pace. And now there's Ed Veer, I think, making a mistake or just allowing Charlie to go through. But that was a close call, and it could have been their race over. But the train is following, and everyone is currently in DRS, which is great to see. And the racing's close, and it's close up in front as well, as it's Frantic to the inside line with Paddles on the inside as well to try and give it a go. They've cut the corner to try and get side by side with Terence, and that was absolutely brutal, and Terence has just had to let everything fall away from them, and that's never going to work because there's another missed braking moment from Terence, and there's a bit of contact with the rear of the Mercedes, and they just managed to keep it away from each other. Pados still has the pace without that front wing, but it's now Frantic leading the way instead of Terence, and Frantic's going to try and find an opportunity to break away. And we have the other Dutchman now leading the way. Gladio unfortunately getting a time penalty as they come at the final corner. It's Gogo Pados who is looking pretty hungry, and with having the tyre situation, they should have the upper hand, but with the damage, they want to try and get everything done as quick as possible. They caught up massively right there, and then everybody bunches up into turn 3 and gets so close to each other, and it almost looked like it was going to go completely wrong. You just tense a little bit when everybody does go into the corner. We've got the Williams who dives to the inside as they switch around and up on Terence, but Terence isn't going to let it go that easily. They've now got the inside line and they should have the upper hand, but it's Jericho Willis who wants to have a look at the switchback, but they didn't quite get there, and that is that. A brilliant defence there from Terence. They still have DRS of Paddles just up in front. And the train is following on nicely. Everybody is keeping up with each other at the moment. Of course, we've got a bit of damage in the grid and 2 time penalties already. I'm just looking through all the different cars to see if anybody a little bit further behind does have some sort of issue. It's Verf who's got some sort of pace in the car. They almost like they won the race yesterday, you know. They did, so they are effectively the fastest car around Austria. They know what they're doing, but also they have a lot of cars around them that are current tier and they're trying to fight. We've got Jericho Willis and Charlie who are fighting each other in the pack, and Jericho almost made a mistake and lost it all as they would try to defend from the pole, and the American still managed to make it work, driving for the Williams that they used to drive for a few seasons ago when they joined LSI for the first time. We've got a mix of hards and mediums in the grid at the moment, mostly mediums, but it's a fairly spread out hard tyre run right now. Gladio's going to be a lot quicker later on into this race, and Verf of course is going to be doing a similar thing. Verf doing that crazy strategy yesterday, looking to try and do a similar thing possibly today. It's Frantic who leads the way on the medium tyre. That seems like the more popular strategy, and they've got a car in between them that has damage compared to the next car that doesn't have damage. So they're looking in a strong position, and they are in P1 as they try to fight for P1. Last time around in Zandvoort, they still won for the current tier drivers, but it was Jericho Willis who took that victory in the end with the wet conditions that we saw. So a wet race in that one last weekend, and we might see some rain come in to play at the end of this one, and it is going to be ERS and DRS available for Pados into the braking zone. They go side by side, and they didn't try to go for the move mid-corner. They just basically tried to go side by side through the corner and fight it a little bit later in, and it's going to be Terence watching on behind as nothing happens. And Pados just can't compete when it gets to this middle sector. They have to try and get the move done sooner, otherwise it's never going to be possible, and they're just going to use more battery. That is Gladio getting a time penalty as Tom breaks away from the pack, unfortunately, and it's 1.3 seconds that splits them. It's actually Tom who's gone into the pit lane, so Tom must have had some sort of problem, and that's why maybe we see Gladio have some sort of issue. Tom almost getting themselves a penalty, but Gladio, yep, having a time penalty, unfortunately, as all of a sudden there was a big delay. There isn't going to be a front wing change, so I'm not entirely sure what the problem is with Tom right there. It's side by side though, up in front, and it's Gergo Paddles back into the lead of the Grand Prix. And DRS available for Frantic, but they don't seem to be in a rush to make that move once again. It is Verf though on the inside of Charlie, as that is a brilliant move around the outside for Charlie, but will they be able to hold on to it? It's more of a defence really from Verf, who's on the attack as their tyres are getting better and better in this Grand Prix. The train continues to rage on as we now see that split. Of course, Gladio unfortunately being split away from the pack, and then Tom having that pit stop. That's just the nature of the circuit. If you don't play it perfect, it goes pretty wrong pretty easily and pretty quickly. And quickly, Gergo Paddles is going up front despite the damage, but it's Frantic who's so close, and oh, it's going to be a big lock-up, and it's just a domino effect further behind. I don't think anybody's got any damage somehow, but Terence goes into the back of Frantic as Frantic has a little bit of a squirmy moment on the brakes, trying to make sure that they don't brake too late. And then that was Charlie and Jericho, I think, being involved. I think Verf just managed to avoid any contact, but they might have been involved as well. I'm not entirely sure. Edvir just watching the battles up ahead as they have three higher tier drivers in between them and the next current tier driver. Of course, it can help sometimes to have a current tier driver in. That is another pit stop, and that is going to be Edvir. Not Edvir going into the pit lane, it's going to be, who is that going into the pit lane? Charlie, going for an early stop, crashing into the wall, and they might have damage. They tried to go for a different strategy play, but unfortunately, a little bit of contact, luckily, seems to not be a problem. But they are very fortunate that that's the case. Going for an incredible undercut. I say incredible, I'm still used to the previous strategies. F1.5 the tyres are a lot more vulnerable, and you have to try and do something a bit different. So this is actually more of a straightforward strategy, and now Tom gets a brilliant undercut on the pole, And now to the inside line, they have a quick look, but the tyres are way too cold to go for some sort of send at this point, so they do just let things be. In the meantime, Edveer has dropped away from Verf. DRS is available though for Charlie here, and that is going to be the inside line. Much easier than it would have been into turn 3, and Tom will not be able to have another go. That is it, and that's Charlie with a lot of pace in that car, going for a severe undercut, and we'll see what can happen. We'll also see if Gogo Palos decides to go for their front wing change or not, which is going to be interesting to see where they'll end up. Of course, they've got a time penalty as well, just to add to the pain, and Terence and Frantic will be very happy with that. It's Edveer into the pit lane as they broke away from DRS, and they didn't want to spend any more time out of the train. Now they are still out of the train, but they're going to gain some time back. So it is a smart move. It's just whether they can keep it consistent and continue to break or gain. And it's Tom who's holding on to the back of Charlie now, and Tom's going to get a massive help from this right now. It's going to be very good indeed. It's Terence sliding around on the tyres a little bit, so the grip is definitely being lost on this medium, and it's going to be Frantic who goes into the pit lane, almost into the back of the Alpine, and it's now going to be Terence without DRS. And here we go. This changes things, as now Gogo Palos effectively gets a free breakaway and is now going to be leading the Grand Prix with nobody behind with DRS except from Jericho Willis, who's about to make that overtake. Surely he's about to make that overtake, but no, they're not going to be able to go for it, not safely, so they will stay behind for now. But it's very close to the back of Terence, that's for sure. They might want to have a go into turn 4, but Terence did push a hell of a lot up to turn 3 and managed to secure DRS themselves. But surely these guys are going to have to react now to Frantic. Gogo Palos still looking for a bit more of a standard strategy as they go longer on this tyre. Tom has just lost DRS range, unfortunately, on Charlie, so that's going to be a bit frustrating for the German driver. They're very close to the back of the Racing Bull, but it's just not enough. Gladio, of course, not pitting. 4.6 seconds back. It's going to be another pit stop from another car, and that is going to be it for Gogo Palos. Into the pit lane they go, and I do want to check, will they get a front wing repair or not? And it is going to be a front wing change for Gogo Palos. So the safer bet. And out of the pit lane, they will come out very far behind the rest of the field, but at least they can now utilise their pace in this car. And the medium tyre is out and on that car. Are they going to look for a double medium or a double hard? I think it's the double hard. That is the fastest strategy. And that's the way it would seem, of course. It is Terence now the lead current tier driver, with Verf and Jericho Willis just to surround them. Of course, Jericho Willis on that medium tyre as well, and then it's Verf on the hard tyre. The top three, old rivals in F1.5. Now it's a bit of a different situation. It's the F1.5 driver that's still F1.5 going into the pit lane as Terence pushes the absolute limit to the line as they try and go into the pit lane as fast as they possibly can. Unfortunately, that's another time penalty for Gladio there, who is finding it tricky around the circuit with the track limits. It's Charlie who's going to lead the way, net race leader I should say, as they go miles ahead of Terence, and that's just the nature of such a strategy. And they've got a 4-lap advantage disadvantage to Terence, but I think that 4-lap advantage is probably worth it. That is Edveer going ahead of Tom in the meantime, and now trying to hold on to DRS to Frantic, and they do so on that medium tyre. This is pretty good stuff there for Edveer, but is it going to be enough to really gain them that time that they need to stay there? Well, the middle sector's coming up, so can you compete against the multiple Grand Prix winner, Frantic? up in front or not. Previously a championship contender. Oh, and that's frustrating for Jericho Willis, who's been doing such a good job in this race as they did last weekend, and they've been disconnected from the session in a dramatic way, and hopefully they can get back into this one, but that could be pretty much Werth away and looking to try and take a double overall in LSI at Austria. Goyo Pados goes and gets a fastest lap, a 6.9 second lap time on the medium tyre. They are of course going to be taking time out of the hard tyres that have just been into the pit lane. Goyo Pados I'd say is looking at the same tyre to go back on again. That is Tom, who's had a bit of a yellow moment unfortunately, and they drop well behind Terence, so they've lost a fair few seconds there, about 3-4 seconds almost. So that is a frustrating situation. No damage for Tom, but a loss of momentum as Terence continues to break away. And there's some sort of issue that Tom's having right now. I'm going up the wrong way, all the wrong cards. I do apologise for the messy situation there on the screen. And that is a bit strange to see, really. I don't know what was wrong with Tom's situation there. There is Jericho Willis's AI just losing more and more ground in this race. It's Charlie who's up next to try and take that move as Gladio is being caught up by the F1 driver, and they're looking to go for the move already into turn 4. And that was as expected, and they wanted to make sure that this strategy works as well as it can, and if it means that clearing a car earlier and aggressively is the better strategy, then they have to use the battery to try and make it work, and then push like mad in the rest of the lap to avoid the car behind from regaining the position on DRS. And I think that's going to be pretty straightforward because of the tyre situation. 14 lap old hard tyres, absolutely brutal. We saw Zingy go on a very long run yesterday, and they almost made it until the penultimate lap when they ended up losing everything. Gladio into the pit lane, and it's going to be now frantic release to P3. The lead current tier driver still in this race is a 6.842, another fastest lap for Gogo Pados on 4 lap old medium tyres, who's now coming up to the back of Terence. So Gladio, by making that very late pit stop and losing the DRS earlier on, has come out very far behind everybody right now. Jericho Willis unfortunately still not able to get back into this race, and it's really not looking good for the American, who is just having more and more issues. And there it is, Edvir goes through and makes the pass quite nicely. And there is Terence who will follow on as well. And both of these guys have made pit stops, so Edvir is ahead and going for that strategy. They got track position nicely over the driver from Hong Kong, but it's half a tenth of a second, and arguably those tyres are going to be even better than Edvir, if not fairly equal. And that's a time penalty there, another one for Gogo Pados as they continue to try and push. It is Jericho Willis's AI who goes into the pit lane. It's DRS and ERS for Terence, and it's the move into turn 3 as Edvir is, I was going to say, not going to be able to compete with that one, but Terence takes a wide berth as they didn't want to get involved in any shenanigans at this stage of the Grand Prix, and they did lose some time there. 4.5 seconds they've lost to Frantic on their overcut. So can they get that back with 2 laps difference? I don't quite know, but there's more strategy to play, there's potential for rain, and there's another stop that is going to be probably necessary for most, if not all, drivers. I think Gogo Pados was a very special case yesterday by not having to go for the extra pit stop. Many drivers not expecting that one to work, so we're not expecting that to work today either, but it might be attempted, and it is being attempted by the Hungarian. But this time, Charlie doesn't have any time penalties. So it's not going to be quite the same situation. Charlie crossed the line yesterday in first place, but with 9 or 18 seconds of time penalties, that's what made the difference and allowed Verf to take that. Of course, Verf drove a very good race and you can't take anything away from that, but it is a different situation and it's 5.4 seconds that Charlie has. We've got Frantic on their own at the moment, but it is Terence who is actually catching, so that tyre difference is very much real. That is going to be, unfortunately, Tom having an issue. There goes the Ferrari car, and Tom goes down the order with that issue. It's Jericho Willis who hasn't been able to rejoin the session. We're going to double check the situation for them and hope that everything is good to go. I think they've tried to rejoin. Or maybe they've had a desync issue and they are actually still in a race, but just not the right one. It's Verf in P1, 4.4 seconds ahead of the Williams car. Then we've got Charlie. The current tier driver, Frantic, has Terence trying to catch up and close up. You can see the car in front. Watch on board with Terence here. You can see there's the Alpine going through turn 3. Terence knows what they've got in front of them. They know what's possible. And that's unfortunately Tom retiring from the session in the pit lane, and that is their race done. That's their day done. That's the weekend done, and we'll see them in Singapore next weekend. No safety car will be deployed, and that is going to be the delight of, well, not necessarily Verf. They were probably hoping for a safety car at some point soon so they can go into the pit lane, but maybe not this early. They want to go a few more laps so they don't have to make another pit stop under the non-safety car conditions, the green flag conditions. That is Terence very aggressive over a few of those curbs, almost losing the end of the car as they maintain pace on Frantic at this stage. 2-lap difference in their tyres, and the gap is staying almost the same throughout. Gogo Pados 3.0 seconds away, 8-lap of medium tyres, looking to try go back onto the hards as Edvir just does now, and they're going to try and go to the end of the Grand Prix, I assume, at this point. A very early stop here for Edvir, but if they can make this work, the undercut could be worth it. It's going to be difficult though towards the end of the Grand Prix, that's for sure. Still nothing from Jericho Willis, so I think there may be some sort of issue as they are potentially completing the race as they're in a multiplayer session at the moment. There it is, Charlie gets a penalty unfortunately, and they weren't able to stay clean compared to yesterday after all, and unfortunately it is going to make their race a little bit more difficult, but it's definitely a lot better than it was before. A big mistake as they're maybe a little bit heated and distracted how they've just made that mistake. They just keep it in a straight line and they're good to go, and they still have a very good chance in this race, so I don't think they should get so distracted. I will say though, I think Verf needs to fight the position when Charlie does catch up, because it's going to be difficult to do anything other than that. Frantic P3 at the moment, 3.4 seconds away from the pole sitter from yesterday, and Terence still holding on. It's Gogo Pados who is not really gaining anything on Terence, if not losing time, and even though they've got that front wing nice and clean now, it's not quite so easy. So the strategy is still very much not over and very much possible to utilise, but Gogo Pados has got a lot of work to do. It is both Verf and Charlie into the pit lane. It's still a 3-second gap, but now they're going to be on equal tyres at this stage of the Grand Prix. I say that, it might be another hard tyre for Charlie. It will be another hard tyre for Charlie, and it's going to be a medium tyre for Verf as they're forced to go onto the medium tyre because that's what they started on. They started on the opposite tyre, I should say, and it is a legal requirement to go onto a different tyre at least once in this race. Verf has to utilise the performance in this tyre in the first few laps to try and give themselves a buffer, but by the time they get to the end of the Grand Prix, but Charlie's going to be incredibly strong. 3.2 seconds, watch that gap, watch how it changes, and watch what Verf does with these track limits, because they have that advantage and they need to use that to their advantage. It's Frantic who now once again leads the Grand Prix. For the overall race, it's Terence in P2, 3.7 seconds, losing a couple of tenths in this. It's Gogo Pados who continues to struggle on the pace compared to the two cars in front, the championship leader and the driver from Hong Kong who's raced so long in LSI now. Back in 2022 was their first couple of races, and they've given us a lot of dedication with that, of course. That is Gogo Pados into the pit lane as expected, and onto the hard tyre. Assume they will go. It will now be full push to the end of the Grand Prix for Gogo Pados as they will do what they can to overtake as many cars as possible. It's Edvir just up in front of them, a couple of seconds away with no time penalties as well. They're trying to catch up to Gladio, who's going to be on a declining medium tyre. And then we'll see what happens then. That's a 6-second time penalty now to Charlie's name, unfortunately. I was just going to switch over to them to see how they're doing, because they're actually gaining on Verf despite having the worst tyres at this stage. But they've just got themselves a time penalty, and now it is even more possible for Verf to be able to take victory here and get the double in a weekend for LSI. Now Charlie's really got to dig deep here to try and make sure that they don't go over track limits once more, but find that extra bit of pace to really make the difference, to do what they need to do to win this Grand Prix. And they've got a little bit over 10 laps to do it, but they've also got 2.4 seconds to gain and then to overtake before they can even really think about breaking away and diminishing this time penalty disadvantage that they have in the race. Now, of course, if you overtake a car behind them, they get DRS back, so basically if Verf doesn't fight and they can hold on to the back of the racing ball, then it will be pretty sweet for Verf, as they'll be able to gain and not lose so much time despite being on a tyre that's going to be declining. It's Charlie who goes for the fastest lap by a fair bit as well. That is a brilliant lap there for Charlie. We'll just have a look at and see. It's a 2/10 difference to Verf, and it's to the next current tier driver, a 6.8 for Gogo Pados, so it is a hell of a difference. And yeah, showing some brilliant pace right now as Charlie. Still a lot of work to do. There it is though, Gogo Pados and Edvir switching positions. I thought Edvir might have tried to come back at them, almost went into the back of them into the corner, but they do stay away, and they now have DRS, and they're going to try and gain a little bit more back, but with the tyre situation, with the tyre difference, I don't think it's going to be so easy for Edvir to hold on. That line was a little bit tough also for Edvir, so on the exit they did lose a lot of time. It's Gogo Pados in P6 now, as they just made that progress. Time penalty wise, we see 9 seconds for Pados, 12 for Gladio, 6 for Charlie, and 3 for Terence. It's Verf who catches up to the back of Terence and is going to be looking at making this move nice and quickly, very closely to the back of Terence as well. And that is now Charlie having a car in between, so they've got to effectively overtake multiple cars, although we're expecting Terence and Frantic to pit again in this Grand Prix. There it is though, there's the wet conditions. You can see the drops on the screen. It's very light, but it's there, and I think that's what Terence and Frantic are waiting for. And maybe it's Charlie hoping that they didn't end up pitting, because the rain's coming a little bit early this time as it did yesterday, but it's not really that hard still. It's pretty light. We will see how that changes in a few laps time, but Charlie's got to try and get past Terence, the current tier driver, as a high tier driver, needing to make the move as soon as possible because it's only going to get more difficult and those tyres are only going to get slipperier and slipperier. And Verf is going to be in a fairly good situation, but of course Frantic's still leading the Grand Prix, will also be in a good situation to try and win this race on track. 1.5 seconds Verf is behind. DRS still available for Charlie at the moment, but they're not going to go for the move into the corner, but they're going to try and get it on the traction, which I think they should be able to do. The tyre difference is brutal. The ERS is not there, but the DRS is still there, and that's going to be the move, and Terence is not going to let really anything stop Charlie from going through and past, because it wouldn't be wise to fight that in this stage of the race. Of course, as a higher tier driver as well, you don't want to be risking anything too much. Gogo Pados making that fairly recent pit stop, now 14 seconds back on Terence, just up in front of them, with the time penalty as well, which is frustrating of course for sure with the damage that they had. They've had a tough race so far, but the wet conditions have come in and basically made their strategy invalid. So it's a pretty frustrating scenario that the returnee has found themselves in, but it's the way it goes sometimes, and Austria is an unpredictable place, and there is the traction loss on the rear end as the wet conditions continue to build up. And it's maybe a little bit more aggressive than we thought. It's going to be the top two leading the way, and Frantic finds himself in exactly the same situation as they did last weekend. That is Terence having a bit of a nightmare on the rear end, it seems. Now, Frantic found themselves in the train for the top runners throughout most of the race. Then the rain kicked in and they broke away with Jericho Willis, and Jericho Willis broke away. And now Frantic's trying to hold on to DRS range, but they've got pressure from Charlie, being on a very different strategy, very different tyre, over 10 laps difference, which is absolutely insane. But it's Frantic who's waiting for the perfect time to go into the pit lane, as their tyres are pretty old, but they don't want to lose any more time, because then they'll drop behind Terence, who is not going to be going into the pit lane anytime soon. It's going to be Charlie making that move nice and simple. It's going to be Charlie now trying to hunt down the Sauber car up in front before it becomes pit stop time, because they want to try and overtake whilst DRS is still available. That's the easiest way of passing. And then if you're ahead in the wet conditions, then you'll have a much easier time. But it is all hypothetical and all still a couple of laps away, as we continue to see this rain just dripping down and making the circuit slightly more wet as we continue the laps. That 29 out of 36, we've not got too long to go in this Grand Prix. .4 seconds is the gap that splits them, but Frantic breaks or loses the gap to Charlie just up in front. That's 2.8 seconds that Terence and Frantic have, so Terence is gaining, and that 2-lap difference is pretty brutal. These tyres are so tough. That's another time penalty, unfortunately, to Charlie right there, so they continue to struggle. But these tyres are really done here for the Dutchman. The slicks, of course, in the wet conditions are pretty difficult to manage, but 19-lap-old tyres are also quite difficult as well. It seems that there's a little bit more confidence for Terence here, driving the next few corners. We'll watch on board as we see Frantic go into the corner and out of it, and then we'll see Terence go out of it. Yeah, it's fairly similar, never mind. I changed my mind, and they try and creep their way through. It's Verf creeping on the exit, and it's Charlie trying to get to the slip angle just before they start drifting to make sure that they maximise that traction. Now they're within a second of Verf, but I think it might be a little bit too late, as these conditions are getting worse and worse, and it's getting harder and harder to grip onto the surface with that tyre. It's Jericho Willis's AI into the pit lane. It's Gladio in P7 who drops behind Edvir and just finds it really tough to really hold on. Verf stays out, and Charlie so as well. I'm surprised that nobody's decided to go into a pit lane, but it's Frantic who does make that call, and I think we might get a similar situation where it might tell you that it's intermediate tyres as they're in the pit lane. They planned it perfectly last time around with Jericho Willis. I think it was Frantic with Jericho. It was definitely Jericho Willis. Maybe not so perfect this time around, but it is going to be wet conditions very shortly, and they were hoping to get onto that wet tyre sooner rather than later because of the disadvantage that they had on the slick tyre with all that tyre wear. And now it's still looking pretty tough, and it still should be better for a slick tyre to be out on track right now because DRS is still available. But it is so touch and go, so difficult to really make this one work. That is Charlie just trying to stay away from track limits a little bit more. And the grip is so little that you put the throttle on and the car just drives itself towards the outside. And they are going to go into the pit lane, both of the front runners. So they're not going to wait for the DRS to be disabled. That's a big loss of the rear end there from the pole as they go into the pit lane and just keep it under the speed limit just about. It's Terence pushing to the limit and going for that more overcut scenario. They're going to lose some time probably to Frantic. They are going to have one lap extra, but there shouldn't be any tyre concerns anyway. Is it going to be the best call though for Terence? They're going to have slightly warmer tyres. I think Frantic's got it done. They're going to be ahead, and nicely ahead at that as well. There it is. Frantic back into P1 for the current tier drivers. It's Verf and Charlie, an outright battle to the end, but the time penalties are going to say otherwise once more. Now it's Terence with that time penalty as well. It's Gogo Pados, 3.8 seconds behind with an undercut, and they're going to now try and see if they can catch up. 9 seconds with a 6-second difference regarding penalties for these two drivers, as they were fighting earlier on before. They're going to try and reunite, but 4 seconds isn't really that good. It isn't easy to catch up with 32 laps already done, only a few left. Gogo Pados is doing absolutely everything they can. Still, although getting pole position, a podium would be a good achievement for Pados. No car is closer than these two right here for the lead of the Grand Prix. It's Verf who's trying to have another go at taking victory around Austria, this time for the lower tier, but in very similar conditions. There's DRS being disabled, and that's where I would expect cars to go into the pit lane, but it's not quite the same. And now Charlie, hoping for DRS to then make the move into turn 3 on Verf, is now not going to have that, as they will just have to sit behind. And it's going to be so difficult to make an overtake in wet conditions without DRS, as you have dirty air as well, just to add to the wound, and it's going to be so difficult for anything to be done. That's another time penalty in this Grand Prix. It's one of the circuits that you expect to get time penalties at, so you can't blame anyone. It's Verf in P1, 6/10 behind is Charlie, and they're going to try and give it a good old go for a on-track win once more. But other than that, I don't think it's going to really do much about it, and that would show that all three drivers, as of now on lap 33 out of 36, which is a little bit foolish to say, are currently looking at winning with no time penalties, and that's the secret around Austria. That was yesterday, of course, for Verf. It's now Verf in P1 for the overall tier drivers, and it's Frantic in P3, but P1 for the current tier drivers. That's another 3-second time penalty, as Pados now only has a 3-second difference in time penalties compared to the car in front, but they have lost time to the Red Bull car, so Terence showing some good pace in that car, 3 seconds behind Frantic. And there it is, lapping the AI car of Jericho Willis, who I do believe must have some sort of big issue that we aren't really able to fix at this stage. And it's in P1. Lap 35 is just about to begin as the rain pours. And the track conditions are even more difficult. You've got 2 laps to try and make the move, Charlie. You've got to make it count. Verf, defend life like your life depends on it. No DRS, just ERS. Charlie pushes, but 7/10 is a little bit too much. And saving by the time they get to the end of the straight. I think they realise the situation that they're in, and I don't know if it's going to be enough this time. And now finding the final lap of the Grand Prix, once again in the lead. What's it going to be for Verf? Are they going to be able to hold on to it on track? Well, 4/10 in the rain is quite a big gap. Charlie using everything they can in the car. 1.8 seconds though. Frantic has backed off a lot to try and make sure that they keep this car safe and home to take the win. It's Verf. 4/10 in front, and not possible is it to challenge by the Racing Bull behind. And it's a very good drive from both of them, but Verf has got the better of them. It's Frantic who is nursing this car home, and I want to say that they're just backing off because they know that Terence has got a lot of time penalties and they don't need to worry about the Red Bull car. But they are losing a lot of pace. It doesn't really make a difference to them though. They are going to still look at taking their second victory of the season in 2 races. Verf has driven a brilliant race this evening, and they're going to take the double victory for the LSI Championships in Austria. Verf is the king of Austria. A phenomenal drive once again. I cannot say it enough. A great effort from Charlie, but just not enough in the end. Oh, and it's gonna be Frantic who will take it as they squirm out the final few corners along with Terence. Frantic crosses the line to win the F1.5 EU Championship Austrian Grand Prix, and that is a brilliant job in the end. That's Charlie to P3 and Terence just missing out on the overall podium. It's going to be Palos in P5 with Edvir scoring the P6 position, and that is going to be a P4 for the current tier drivers. For Edvir, I say that it's not going to be quite so simple, as it's the Ferrari so close behind. Time penalties will say otherwise, but they gave it their best. They were fighting very much till the end of this race. A lovely little battle at the end there, even though I missed some of it. But of course it's Frantic, the driver today, that should be congratulated. Verf with a great win, and we'll go through the order here. Verf takes victory in Austria. We've got Frantic in P2, and then Charlie in P3. We've got Terence, Gogo Pados, Edvir, Gladio, Jericho Willis disconnecting, and Tom DNFing from earlier on in the race. We get the session results and the race director just in case, as it is a bit of a tricky one around here in Austria. And then we see the pit stop section. And we'll be back for the post-race interviews. We'll see you in a bit. Hello everyone and welcome to the post-race interviews of the Austrian Grand Prix. That was a brilliant old race with a very similar weather condition to yesterday, which is interesting for sure. We start with Frantic. Frantic, that was a little bit of a close one at the front in the first lap, I have to say. It was quite difficult, and throughout the race as well it was quite intense. You were leading for a bit of it as well. The wet conditions were really tough to deal with. Can you take us through it? There was a lot in that race.
Yep. Well, first of all, I'm very happy. Hoo-ha, 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 hoo-ha. Hoo-ha, hoo. I really don't like Austria. That's why I never vote for it at the start of the season. Unfortunately, others do like the track, so yeah, that's
Does it change your mind now you've won?
Well, I've won here before, but it's just I don't like the DRS games here. It's very... I don't know, it's a bit dirty, and I also don't like the way you're always under pressure. It's very scary stuff. But I mean, yeah, it was fun. I was kind of struggling during qualifying. It was very, well, I think it was something with my setup. I just did not have the grip in I think it was the second and third sector in the long corners. So it was very tough. I messed up in the last corner as well. I don't know if you capture that on stream, but I was sliding and drifting all the way through the last sector. But I mean, yeah, it worked out. I started on the mediums to keep up at the start. Eventually I went to the hards because I knew it was going to rain, just didn't know when it was going to rain. It was basically the same as in Zandvoort last time around. But it was fun. It took a bit longer than expected, the rain, but I think that the strategy worked out. The hearts were dying at the end. I had to manage them all the way through, so that was a tough challenge. Terrence was also closing up in the wets as well. It's very... I think my wet pace isn't the best out of all the people here, so I need to improve on that. But we'll get there. Happy that the strategy worked, and I'm also happy that the DRS games didn't happen today.
Fair enough. Yeah, well, it was it was tough throughout, but you managed to get on top of everyone. Well, I don't mean to make it weird.
Hoo-ha, hoo-ha, hoo-ha.
Congratulations. Because there's only you today, we are going to ask, how are you feeling about Singapore, whether you're there or not? Is it a circuit that you like? It's very different to Austria.
Ooh, well, I think the last time I raced at Singapore in the LSI League is like 2 years ago.
Sadly, I won't be there next week because I'll be going. Yeah, yeah. I think last time around I was at a wedding, I believe, so I couldn't be there as well. So I'm gonna miss Singapore again, which is a shame because I do think it's a fun track. Although I've never really driven on it in the LSI League, but I think maybe I can participate in the Friday tier. We'll see, but I'll try my best. I'm curious to see how it goes. Yeah, I don't know how my pace is gonna be, but we'll try.
It'd be great if we could see you there, of course, on the Friday, even if it's not the Saturday, but Australia would be the next race then. That is a circuit that does have a bit of a train-like situation. How do you feel about that?
Ooh, well, I don't know. I don't think I've driven at Australia in the SI League as well, but wait, maybe... No, that's the FPRL League. I don't know if you know the FPRL League. But, okay. Well, we'll see. I think Pursoon has driven on Australia quite a lot, and he's my friend, so he might share a few tips with me. So Pursoon, if you're listening right now, I know you are, please help me.
Help me, a cry for help. Thank you very much, Frantic. Really good effort today. Congratulations. You are the championship leader by the most points you can be. Yeah, congratulations. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Appreciate it. Yep. Hoo-ha.
Hoo-ha. And we move on to the end of the stream. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you next weekend for the Singapore Grand Prix. Have a good one. Bye-bye.